Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BME Life. Today, we have episode 2 of our Startup Spotlight series, and we have a very special guest. This is Jessica Bussert, CEO and founder of Wave Therapeutics. So, Jessica, thank you so much for being here with us.
Hi, Mary. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And we'll just jump right into it. So, Jessica, just for all the viewers out there, could you give us kind of like a one sentence introduction to Wave Therapeutics?
Sure. So my company is focused on providing the world's first smart cushioning technology to prevent and treat bed sores. Um, yeah, it's a unique combination of two clinically proven therapies combined with a smart analytics back end, and we've built it such that it will be affordable to anybody who needs it.
That sounds awesome. And you mentioned, was it pressure injuries? Is that the correct term? Can you tell us a little bit more about it? Like for anyone who's out there and may have never heard that term before, like what is it? What are the demographics around it?
Yeah, so pressure injuries or bed sores, as they're more commonly known,
Mm.
um, are a horrible problem that affect over 3 million Americans every year, and they take the lives of 60,000 more. That's 50% more deaths than from car accidents. So this is a really big deal. Bed sores impact the lives of those that have mobility impairment, that are elderly, that have concurrent medical problems that usually affect circulation or mobility. So these are people that maybe have had a stroke or have diabetes or hypertension or are
Mm.
obese, and they're more sedentary. And the mechanics behind what forms a pressure injury are pretty simple. So if you look at your own arm and you push a finger into it and you hold that finger there for about 20 or 30 seconds, when you lift up your finger, you'll notice the skin has gone all white. It's
Mhm.
blanched out. You've physically pushed the blood out of those tissues. And in a healthy individual, once you remove that pressure, the blood rushes back in and it quickly pinks back up. That's a
Mhm.
process called capillary refill. But if you never relieve the pressure from that part of the tissue, or if you've got impaired circulation that affects the blood getting back to those cells, the cells can quickly starve for want of nutrients and oxygen. And when they starve, they die and they form these horrible ulcerative sores that can burrow all the way up to somebody's bones and their
Wow.
muscles. And then they get septic and unfortunately many people die.
Yeah. Wow. 60,000 people in the US, right? Yeah, that's really crazy, like thank you so much for that explanation. I thought that was really good one. And I know your background is as a registered nurse, you're a healthcare professional, and I'm sure you see lots of different problems in the medical field. What was it about pressure sores that made or bed sores that made you want to focus on that specifically?
Yeah. So, actually, my background's a little more complicated because for the first half of my life, I worked in high level global tech. So I was, an uber computer geek. And it was
Mhm.
only later in life that I went back to school to become an ER nurse. So in the ER, we can deal with any kind of problem that comes in the door. Somebody's giving a premature birth, there's a gunshot wound, there's a car accident. Or in this particular case, it was a disabled vet who had lost his legs in Afghanistan. And he showed up in my ER septic and almost dead from the worst infected bed sores I'd ever seen. And his story broke my heart. We supposedly live in the greatest country in the world, and yet we don't take care of our poor, let alone a vet that served our country. And
Mhm.
this really made me angry. And then when I started looking into the problem a little more, and I realized that the existing solutions that were on the market were not nearly as effective as they could be, and they were all grossly expensive.
Mm.
It just felt like a moral imperative to use my tech skills and my healthcare knowledge to come up with a better solution and to design it so that we can manufacture it affordably so that those that need it could get it.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing story. And definitely very impactful to have a patient who's dying and feel like there's nothing you can do for them. So you create something for them. And I believe this is something that maybe a lot of healthcare professionals experience at least once in their lifetime, wishing there was something else out there. But of course, everyone's busy and not everyone has the time to create a new solution. So, what was it for you that made you realize I can actually create a solution? Like, I can make this and help not just this one patient, but thousands or millions of patients in the future.
You know, I've always been a person that believes when you see a problem, you have a moral imperative to try to address that problem. And we can't fix everything. We're single individuals. We've only got so much bandwidth. But this particular story really resonated with me, and I kind of felt a calling to
Mhm.
um, to work on it. And so I started doing the prototyping while I was still working in the hospital. And it wasn't until the ideas had started to more fully flesh themselves out and that I had gotten a lot of external independent validation of the ideas. I mean, I literally knocked on the door of some of the leading researchers in the world and said, "What do you think about this approach?" And
Mhm.
I was getting really positive feedback. And the combination of all of that eventually led me to decide that maybe it was best to leave the hospital environment and focus on this full time. I'm I love working in the ER. I loved it. But on any given shift, I might be able to improve or maybe even help save a couple of
Mhm.
lives. And I can make a much bigger impact if we can get this technology to market and really start preventing these horrible deaths.
Yeah, of course. No, totally agree. And you mentioned that you were a healthcare professional working full time. You'd rather spend your time focusing on this. What is your advice to maybe other healthcare professionals that might be going through similar situations where like they're thinking of maybe developing a product, but they're like, oh, I don't really have enough time, or I don't really know how to balance having this full-time job that is very demanding and energy consuming. And then on top of that, looking into developing a new device that is no small task, it's a pretty big thing to do. So what's your advice? How did you do it? What would you tell other people that want to do this themselves?
If you're just doing this as maybe an opportunity to make a buck, or you think that it's a glamorous lifestyle starting a startup, um, don't run the other way. Your life will have a lot less stress if you keep working your 12-hour shifts. You'll have a lot less stress and probably a lot more money. Um, to do something like this and be successful at it, I really believe you need to be mission driven. It's got to be something more than the money. And even at the end of the day, if it's a mission, it's still going to be a hard mission. Fundraising, um, getting people to buy into your idea, both emotionally and with their capital, is really difficult, especially if you are a female or minority founder. I mean, it's like the cards are stacked against us. I don't know if you know these statistics, but in the United States, only 3% of all deal flow goes to women and minority founders. The other 97% goes to the straight white tech bro guys. And I'm not slamming the straight white tech bro guys, but the playing field isn't really that balanced.
Mhm.
And because of that, it's a tough, tough road. And you can't do the endurance if you're just chasing a buck. You need to have that mission. And
Mhm.
so I guess in closing, I'm going to say perseverance
Yeah.
is one of the biggest traits. You've just got to be willing to go and fight and work in spite of all the obstacles.
No, that's great advice. And you kind of touched on my next question. You talked about the difficulties of starting a startup. What would you say was your biggest challenge throughout this journey so far?
My single biggest challenge by far is fundraising. I'm not an affluent person with affluent family members and affluent friends.
Mhm.
So doing the traditional friends and family round is just really not an option to me.
Mhm.
Um, and getting high net worth individuals fired up about bed sores, it's quite frankly, it's a challenging task. We're
Yeah.
doing it. We're getting the job done, but it's a lot slower than I would have liked. And the downside to that slowness is every year we're not to the market. Every year we're not to the market is another 60,000 people that could have benefited with
Mhm.
their lives from this technology.
Yeah, that's really sad, that I feel like there should be more resources out there for companies like this. Like maybe I know there's like government grants, but yeah, fundraising is definitely a big challenge, especially like you said, I feel like CEOs are typically inspired by other CEOs, so they have like this group of people that are affluent, like you were saying, but like, what if someone else wants to break into that world and it's difficult? So yeah, no, I can totally understand that. Mhm.
You mentioned about government grants, and I guess we should just point out here that
Yeah.
although there are some government grants out there, they are very difficult to apply for and very costly to apply for. And they take, as much as a year and a half to go through the approval process. And at the end of the day, they only award those to between 10 and 20% of the companies that apply for them. So
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort chasing that money. And you at the end of the day, the odds are that you're not going to get it. And the real tragedy there is if I were building a different kind of bomber or a smart weapon or something designed to kill tens of thousands of people, the government would throw money at me. But a product inspired by a disabled vet, that's not that sexy. And people aren't as excited about throwing money at it.
No, that's very unfortunate, but hopefully we can help spread the word and just make people realize how big of a problem this really is. And I guess on the other side, we've heard about the difficulties and challenges with having a startup, but what have you most enjoyed about this process so far?
So I get to work with a lot of really smart people that are helping me overcome some really challenging issues.
Mm.
So, for example, the air bladders that make up our wheelchair cushion, they're made out of layers of neoprene rubber. Now, neoprene is an amazing material because it it's resistant to just about any kind of harsh disinfectant you could imagine. It's impervious to a lot of environmental dangers and hazards that would erode a different material. And although it's really cool in that respect, it's very difficult for the very same reasons to glue together. Well, we got 3 layers of neoprene, we got to bond together. And the smart people that we have on the team that are formulating new, um, innovative bonding agents to get that job done. Wow, these people are geniuses. Likewise, the team that's working on the electronics controllers, I got great people um, working on that stuff. So getting to work with really bright people that are invested in trying to help me address this problem, that's really gratifying.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing, and actually reminded me of one of my first, well, my first internship as a student was with a startup, and I remember working with the CTO and he mentioning that I was trying to remember, but he said like there's a trilogy in startups that really make up a good startup, and I forgot what one of them was, but I know there were three T's, and one of it was team and technology. And so having a really good team is definitely one of the most important things you could focus on when having a startup, right? Like how do you go about building that the team that will help you push this to the market and make this a reality? So I guess on that note, how did you go about choosing and developing your team?
So in some cases, it was a little bit of luck, fortuitous luck, and perseverance. Just keep working through finding the right people. I don't know if this is accurate, but I would say your 3 T's are team, technology, and tenacity, because it goes back to that perseverance. You just got to
Yes.
keep fighting through it. But I've talked to a lot of people along the way, and I've told them the story of the vet, and I've told them other stories of people that I've encountered that have suffered through these problems. And I think that there's a certain type of person that hears that passion and resonates with it. Maybe they resonate with it because they've had a family member that suffered from this problem. Maybe they've got a broader worldview where they also feel a responsibility to help make our world a better place. But at the end of the day, I've just met some really incredible mission driven people. My co founder, Dr. Ricardo Vasquez, um, I approached him back in 19 with one of our earlier handmade prototypes, and he was so taken by the technology. He's a vascular surgeon who sees and treats these kind of problems all the time, and instantly saw the approach that we were taking had merit, and instantly realized how many of his patients would benefit from accessing it. And I'm really excited to say he became our first investor and is also our chief medical officer. He personally has seen what unequal access to healthcare looks like in the world. Dr. Vasquez is a first generation immigrant who came to the US with his agricultural worker family. And through hard work and perseverance and a lot of scholarship, got grants and scholarship awards, and worked his way through Davis Medical School to become a very successful surgeon today.
That's awesome. That's really amazing that you have such a good co-founder, and I'm sure you both a power couple just driving Wave Therapeutics. But yeah, I guess next question I had is, could you tell us a little bit more about your technology? I know you don't want to share every single detail about it, but for someone wondering, okay, but what is the product at Wave Therapeutics? Could you tell
Yeah.
us more about it?
So, it would help out to start by telling you a little bit about what other technologies look like
Yes.
right now, because there hasn't been innovation in this space for a long, long time. So right now, there are 3 primary ways to keep people from developing a bed sore. The first is labor intensive, where you send your staff around your facility every 2 hours, and they manually reposition patients that are at risk for developing these sores. and they'll reposition them with, rolled up towels or pillows. And 2 hours later, they'll come and they'll move the towels or pillows to a different position. So it doesn't really work. And as you know, there's a staff shortage in facilities all over the nation. So there's just not enough people to do it.
Mhm.
When you look at devices, the most common solution is to just use pads made of foam, gel, or air that just sit there and they don't move. They don't do anything. So the most common wheelchair cushion, the most popular market leading wheelchair cushion that's out there is a $400 air pillow that you just blow up and you sit on. And it's about functionally equivalent to a pool toy. It's ridiculous.
Mhm.
And then at the very highest end, you've got these devices called alternating pressure devices that just act like a teeter-totter, where 1 minute they'll inflate the right side and the next minute they'll inflate the left side. So all day long, they're just rocking you from side to side. That's all they do. But if you think back to your biology, you know that our circulatory system doesn't flow from side to side. It doesn't flow back and forth like that. We're a great big circle that goes from top down and down up. So all these teeter-totters are doing is moving stagnant, deoxygenated blood from one place to the next. And when I started looking at the problem, I realized, we got to do something better than this. So at its core, Wave joins two clinically proven therapies, alternating pressure and sequential compression. So we're creating a rolling wave of low pressure under the user that complements vascular blood return and promotes bringing fresh oxygenated blood back to those at-risk tissues while also changing up the pressure points. And then we combine that with an analytics backend with sensors and communications that deliver real-time data to patients and caregivers and remote patient monitoring to better enable aging in place. So I like to tell people, what Ring and Nest did for simple doorbells and thermostats,
Mm.
we're doing the same thing for medical cushioning devices. We're taking it to a different level.
That's awesome. That's really exciting. And, I like that you're involving the remote monitoring portion because little by little, it's like coming to every kind of device almost. And I mean, it's been a slow transition, I think, but we're seeing it more and more and more medical devices. So that's really exciting that you're also doing that already. And, we're pretty close to the end of this podcast, but one of the last two things I wanted to touch on is where would you say Wave Therapeutics is now when it comes to kind of like that life cycle of a medical device company? Like from inception to the finish line, which I guess is, I mean, going to market isn't really the finish line. There's still a lot of things you need to do afterwards. But, in that life cycle, where would you say Wave Therapeutics is right now?
So we went through a huge client discovery process where I interviewed over 500 people that were stakeholders in this space, everyone from users to caregivers to family members to administrators and business decision makers. And we used their input to inform 8 generations of prototyping before we then moved to what's called the design for manufacture phase, where we're actually building a product that we can manufacture and sell. And I'm really excited to say we're at the end of that process and we are ready to start selling our first MVP product, which will be our wheelchair cushion. We're expecting to launch that into the market Q1 of next year, contingent upon our current fundraise. So we're currently raising a $5 million seed round that will accelerate that route to market. Gotten an agreement for our first clinical study to prove out additional use cases. So these are over and above pressure injury prevention, which is what we're going to go to market with. We've got a relationship with the Veterans Health Administration, and we're going to do some testing at some of their facilities. We're looking for pilot opportunities. So if you own a facility and you're interested in this space, and want to help improve the lives of your patients while bringing down a big cost center for your company, we're looking for pilots. And we're also looking for about 50 early adopters who want to, use our cushion at home and give us feedback on things that we can do to tweak it or additional opportunities for change. So we're right on the cusp of doing that launch into the commercial space.
That's awesome. That must be very exciting to be so near the finish line. And you mentioned you're looking for somewhere to do your pilot or some early adapters. For all the audience watching out there, how else can people help Wave Therapeutics?
Well, I love those introductions. That's really helpful. To pilot facilities, to researchers. Even though we've done 500 interviews, I'm doing as many more as I can get because every bit of information I can get is going to help us out. So if you're interested in learning more, if you are interested in connecting us to resources, or if you potentially want to be a resource yourself, reach out to us at Jessica at Wave Therapeutics Inc. inc.com. So wavetherapeuticsinc.com. And I'd love to hear from your audience.
Great. And we'll definitely put that information down in the description box so that people can find it very easily. But yeah, I think that pretty much leaves us at the end of this video. But Jessica, thank you so much for sharing this information on Wave Therapeutics. I think it's an amazing company. It's definitely been an honor to interview you, and I'm sure you'll accomplish many more amazing things. I mean, you already are, but it definitely, it's really solving a great need that it's unsolved. So I'm very excited to see you succeed pretty soon.
Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate you having me here and hearing out the story.
Of course. Thank you.